Hi, and welcome to our Dreamweaver CS5 Fundamentals series. In the last several videos, you've been building up some basic skills for creating web pages inside of Dreamweaver. You've learned how to create sites and add pages to those sites, and then how to set up content and links actually on those pages. So now it's actually time to start creating our first website and learn how to create a page layout. Now, I'm going to go ahead and bring up Fireworks here, and I've actually created a mock-up of a fairly simple website for us to work on. Now, the first thing that you're going to do whenever you start to lay out a web page is to create a mock-up like this. Some people prefer to do this in Fireworks or Photoshop or another graphics program. Other people prefer to do it on graph paper and then maybe move into Photoshop or Fireworks. Whichever way works the best for you doesn't matter, but you do need to have some sort of a mock-up so that you know where you're going and where you're headed before you start your actual page layout. Now, there are a couple different ways to create page layouts. One is using tables and the other is using CSS. If you're interested in learning how to lay pages out with CSS, I'd recommend that you go look at the CSS Fundamentals videos. And then we have a number of project videos up, and those all show how to create sites like this using CSS instead of tables. So for this particular project, we're going to use tables. And you can see here how this design sort of lends itself to a table style format. We have a row up here at the top that's just filled in with this brown, followed by a banner, and then we have the sub-banner area down here. Now, our fourth row in our design is actually split into two columns, whereas the first three rows just had one column going all the way across. So our fourth column is going to need our fourth row is going to need two columns. And then our final row down here in the bottom, our footer row, is again just filled in with a color, much like our top row right here. So this particular design is actually going to have 5 rows inside of it, and the fourth row we need to split into 2 different pieces. So let's go ahead and begin to create the page and set up the table for this layout. I'm going to go ahead and minimize Fireworks, and here I am back in Dreamweaver, and I've actually already created a site for us and added some images to that site. Now what we're going to go ahead and do is just right click on our root folder and say new file and create our home page, which is called index.html. And just remember, your first page is always going to be called index. I'll double click on that and that opens me up in design view. Now, in order to create that 5-column 1-row table, we're going to go to the insert menu and we're going to select table. And we're going to go ahead and start off with 5 rows and 1 column. We also need to say how big this design is going to be, or how wide the table needs to be for this design. In our case, the width of the design is really going to be determined by how wide this top picture is here. And if I click on this top picture here and go to the Properties panel, I can see that it's 800 pixels wide. So our table also needs to be 800 pixels. The border thickness I'm going to leave empty. Cell padding I'm going to make 0. And cell spacing I'm going to go ahead and make 2. Now, here's the difference between cell padding and cell spacing. Padding is on the inside, spacing is on the outside. So if you need some padding to push your content away from the edge of your cell, you're going to use cell padding. If you want to push the rows themselves apart, that's when you're going to go ahead and use spacing. If we look at our design, we'll see examples of both of these. You can see this white line here. That white line is separating the 2 rows, and we achieve that using spacing. And the same thing is true of this white dividing line in between our title area and this banner. So that's spacing. But if we scroll down a little bit, you're going to see we've got a cell here and also a cell here. But the content for this cell is being pushed away from the edge. That's padding. You can see if we look up here on our graphic, this graphic comes all the way to the edge of the cell. So there's no padding at all. So we've placed some padding on this fourth row, while we're going to place spacing on the outer rows. And again, you'll see how we do that here. So I'm going to go ahead and again make padding 0, and I'm going to make spacing just 2, just to bump those rows apart a little bit. I'll click OK, and there's my initial grid. Now what I'm going to do is count down 1, 2, 3, 4 rows, and I'm going to split this row into 2. Now there's 2 ways that we can do that. You can right-click on that cell, select Table, and then split the cell. But that'll lead to some problems a little bit later on. And it also won't allow us to apply any new padding, which we need on these interior cells. So I'm going to go to the Insert menu and select Table. So I'm inserting a table inside of another table. When I select that, I'm going to say this is 1 row, but 2 columns. And instead of 800 pixels, I'm going to go ahead and say that this takes up 100%. And it's 100% of whatever that row or whatever that table is contained in. So saying 100% here will allow that interior table to expand out to 800 pixels, which was the exterior table. And now I'm going to go ahead and apply 15 pixels of padding, but 0 spacing onto our interior row here. And again, the 15 pixels will push the content away from the edge of the cell. I'll click OK, and there is my 4th row. I need to point at the middle there and sort of drag this over a little bit. And now you'll very clearly see there's our 3 top rows, or our 3 header rows. Here's that left-hand navigation area, and here's the content area, followed finally by the footer. In the next video, we're going to go ahead and add some content to this design, and we'll start to see it take shape.